and the role that played. I know you just touched on it briefly, but can you just just elaborate that on a bit more, and how the impact that played, and obviously the transmission of the information. Like you said, they only had 30 copies, but obviously without something like that, we might not know the information. You might not have known the information when writing this book if it wasn't for the impact of the Gutenberg press.
Yeah, I mean, printing is one of the really transformative moments in history, and lots of people have compared it with our own age of, the internet and digital media and that kind of thing, because it made information much more freely available. It obviously impacted on literacy rates. Many more people started to learn to read, and that, of course, has the knock-on effect. And this is one of the really it's one of the really sort of poignant things, which when I think about my research I did and think about my book, is that throughout the whole period that it covers, only probably 1% of the population are being educated at any one time, if that. And they're male, obviously, and they're wealthy. And just imagine how many geniuses that we missed out on. How many geniuses spent their whole life herding goats or having kids, or, whatever it was, all the women, so printing affected that in a positive way, because it had a very important influence on education, which gradually became more and more available, and books became cheaper. And also, when it comes to scientific texts, a lot of the recopying that went on in manuscript form in the Middle Ages, every person who made a new copy made their own particular mistakes, and perhaps sometimes didn't understand the text. And I have to give a disclaimer here that I don't understand. I have a copy of Euclid's Elements, but I cannot understand it. I'm not a mathematician. I'm not a scientist. My husband is a mathematician, so he helps me sometimes when I need it. But, lots of the people that were making these copies, they had no knowledge of the subjects. So mistakes had been introduced. And the great thing that happened with printing was that scholars began to produce copies of these texts, which were based on loads and loads of different manuscripts, loads of versions that they compared and collated and edited and made critical additions, just like we do today. And they were then printed. And because they were printed, there was a degree, not obviously to the extent that we have today, but there was a degree of accuracy that could be sort of guaranteed. And that was really, really important.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when you do it by hand as well, there's an element of fabrication, or... Yeah. Not only fabrication, but also, for instance, I always think about this with stories of actual history. I mean, you're a historian, so you must think about this all the time, is when information gets passed down, it's like, what is elaboration? What's truth? What's just someone trying to, make someone look great?
Yeah, and what's the bias of the person? So why is the person telling you the story? Who are they? What are their, what's their situation? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, whose side do they fall on? Because that obviously
and also they
everything.
could just be one of those people that can't tell a story as it is, always has to add in and exaggerate. And we all have friends like that, don't we, where you hear the same story again and again, but each time it gets more and more outlandish. And I'm sure a lot of those people that the sources that history is based on, it must have been those kind of people, because they're the ones that like telling stories. So never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Thank you for watching this video. To listen to the full podcast, click the link in the description below.